Hi.
It's 5:30 and I'd like to call to order the Curriculum and Student Development Committee of the Madison Board of Education. The committee is Mary Ann Connolly, Kathy Miller, and myself, Steve Penn. So we have a number of things on our agenda tonight, and I would like at this point to turn the agenda over to our Assistant Superintendent, Gail Dallingham, to introduce the items on our agenda and the presenters that are here this evening.
Thank you so much, and welcome to our guests. Tonight we have Chris Pagliuco, who's here. He is the Social Studies K-8 coordinator. We have Pete Nye, who's the grade 9 through 12 coordinator and also a teacher, both of them. And we have Julie Johnson, who teaches lots of stuff in social studies.
Most of psychology.
Yeah, it's also here with an AP Psych adoption, but Julie also wrote curriculum. And later on, we'll get to LSAN and then international field trips. So tonight we are bringing the world to your door. So we're going to, right, yeah. So I'd like to thank, all of the people who are here who actually worked on the curriculum revision. If you recall, the curriculum that is coming up on review and refresh cycles are only a 1-year cycle, and they have no curriculum head of the project other than the coordinators who are also teaching part-time and doing their coordinator role part-time. So it is difficult, to say the least. And Chris and Pete, I'd like to thank you for your leadership and your work in getting us across the threshold to adopt these courses. And of course, there's teachers who are writing alongside of them that are in during the summer and working during the school year. So it is nice to see that curriculum is being refreshed and presented for adoption. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris. You want to start us out?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight. As was mentioned, I'm Chris Pagliuco. I work with our teachers from kindergarten through 8th grade. And we've been doing a wide variety of revisions from grade to grade, but one particularly heavy lift this year was in grade 6, which was a real revamp of the course in response to a lot of concerns raised by the grade 6 team. And we have a lot of confidence in the new curriculum that we've worked really hard for close to a year now on rebuilding. If we take a look up at the screen, you can follow along. Just as a reminder, in grade 6, we have 3 30-day units that alternate with science. So that gives you an idea of the amount of time that we can dedicate to the curriculum and the number of learning activities we can fit in. We have 3 units this year, and these units are arranged chronologically, but they also have strong themes that run through the units individually, but also throughout the duration of the year. And I'll be explaining that a little bit more as we go along. The first unit discusses prehistory and ancient civilizations, and our theme is bringing order to the city. And the capacity that we focus on throughout the unit is citizenship. And one of the PBA, which features citizenship, is the application of the 5 relationships of Confucianism. And we have piloted that this year, and the kids really enjoy at 6th grade thinking about how they relate to different people in their lives. I think a lot of times 6th graders are like, I act the same way in every situation. And to challenge them with how do you act with a friend, how do you act with a parent, how do you act with a coach, that's pretty stimulating for them. And we give them scenarios and so forth. The second unit is the spread of ideas. This is particularly relevant to today with the internet and digital technology and ideas spreading around the world, nanoseconds. And we take a look at different technologies throughout the Middle Ages and how that increased the spread of ideas and what the outcomes of that was. The capacity of that unit is analysis, and the students create a product for the Silk Road Trade Fair, a lesson that builds upon a previous lesson on inflation, so it sort of has economic themes running through it. And they construct a product that synthesizes values and geography and ideas that they appreciate from our study of world cultures. We also piloted that this year, and it was really very cute and inspiring. Some kids made face masks that incorporated the values and design of different cultures. And the idea is not just one culture, but across cultures. And it's just so authentic, and they trade them and they really like each other's products. It's quite neat. Finally, we go to Worlds Collide. Now, the previous unit was about how ideas spread through technology, but what happens when people come together? And it's not always pretty when people come together, and it hasn't been always pretty in history. So we're trying to ask ourselves, how can we get along? How can we appreciate each other and create a more peaceful world? And that took place with East meeting West, and Europe meeting Africa, Europe meeting the Americas, and Europe meeting Asia. Our capacity is alternate perspectives, and the role that they're going to be playing is a lawyer at the court of Valladolid. And they, in essence, argue for human rights as a lawyer. And I could expand upon that further, but I think I'm going to leave it at that at this point. Chronologically, our first unit is the ancient civilizations and prehistory. The second unit is the medieval world. And the third is exploration, colonization, and imperialism. When we designed this course, we were really keenly aware of different forms of alignment that I wanted to share with you. The first was vertical alignment. We were trying to build upon specific skills in grade 5, as well as to where they're going in grade 7 and grades 7 and 8. I teach grade 7 right now. My wife teaches in grade 6. I'm very aware of what she and her team are teaching and how we can push off of that in grade 7. We are also trying to be closely aligned to the Connecticut Social Studies standards, which I'll be mentioning a little bit later in the presentation. Within units, we're trying to grow capacity within the 6 weeks, such as in their nonfiction reading skills in the units or their geography skills within units. And we're trying to scaffold those skills and grow throughout the year. And finally, interdisciplinary alignment. Our grade 6 teachers also teach language arts. And so we're trying to utilize their skills and the skills that they're teaching the kids in LA, and we want to double that over into the social studies classes. We have other instructional priorities that we kept in mind as we were designing the curriculum, and I'd like to share those with you. And I think by sharing them with you, it'll give you a clear idea of what these units consist of. The first one is that through social studies, we're trying to provide the students with certain cultural anchor points. We want the kids to be informed and aware citizens of the world. In that sense, you can see around the center circle, we have lexicon and vocabulary. We want the kids to know what archaeology is and anthropology is, linguistics are. We have a lot of sophisticated vocabulary that the kids will come away familiar with. To that end, we also have a strong component of morphology, which is strong in language arts. It's a strong theme that runs through all the middle school grades, if not earlier. The students are taught the basics of the world's major religions, and then they compare those religions on a grid across, drawing similarities and differences. We'd like them to be familiar with iconic locations around the world. Sounds a little bit silly, but the idea that the pyramids are in Egypt, for instance, is a no-brainer for the kids after this sort of unit. The chronology of events. We'd like to know that the medieval castles came after the pyramids, and our expectations, I assure you, are much higher than that, but that gets the point across. I believe that it's important that the kids have these cultural anchor points so that we can then strive for the more aspirational learning that Madison really values, and the kids are able to use the terminology in that higher learning that we have in the PBAs and other stage 2 assignments. We also try to scaffold skills. The kids should have a greater capacity at the end of the unit than at the beginning. and at the end of the course and at the beginning. I've highlighted up here nonfiction reading skills. This is something we were just working on the department meeting this afternoon. And my LA teachers are stronger at scaffolding these skills than I am personally, but that's what we had on the agenda. You can see up at the top right, simply using text clues. Then we go to boxes and bullets and outlining in forms of note-taking. We might progress to using evidence, then to inferencing, which is a real challenge for the students. And then finally, especially later in the year, can they make connections over time? In other words, can they take this information from unit 3 and where were we in the previous units and what does that tell us? So this is a brief example. We also have map reading skills. We have historical thinking skills, and I could give you those as well, but you get the idea. We have really strong interdisciplinary connections in these units, and that's really exciting for the kids. One thing the teachers spoke about is we really wanted interactive activities for the kids that are student driven, and we've built that in. We do have the nonfiction reading that informs it, and then we get to that activity. So throughout the year, students will be philosophers, there'll be archaeologists, there'll be lawyers, there'll be actors, there'll be historians, there'll be cartographers, there'll be architects, and that's just off the top of my head. So that's really exciting for the kids to get to play these roles. It's very authentic, and it appeals to all different types of learners. We have scaffolded content as well. One example was just in language. You can see on the left from Unit 1, we cover cuneiform. We go on to Egypt with a brief lesson on the Rosetta Stone. We go to the Latin alphabet and a sort of a historical basis of morphology. Then we go to the Chinese characters and we figure out how a Chinese cell phone works when they have a character-based language with 200,000 Chinese characters. Well, how do they do it? And it's a really fascinating story. And of course, Arabic when we cover or when we investigate the Muslim Empire in the Middle Ages. I can do this as well with Christianity and the world religions. Over time, we build upon those religions, and those religions are informed by our previous study of other religions. We also try to make modern connections. We want to use history as a tool in our own lives. So I already mentioned the spread of ideas through digital technology. That's a theme that we mention. If we're going to do the printing press, we talk about what's the difference between the printing press and digital technology and so forth. We have an emphasis on human dignity. We try to make direct application to the students' personal lives and give them opportunities to express that. And then I briefly referenced East and West interactions, but it's also North and South around the world. Geography is very, very strong with the state standards in grade 6, among other grades, and we try to have a very consistent attention paid to geography, excuse me. So you can see here, we have the kids using compasses and doing orienteering and creating riddles and moving around the building. At one point, we do political maps so that they're overlaying ancient civilizations and physical geography over the modern political map so they have an idea of where countries are located around the world. I should mention this isn't rote memorization. The kids are informed, they have these nice activities and lessons involved, but it's not like they're filling in the map and drawing the map and that's the end of the activity and so forth. We also get into cultural geography, and a really strong message within that is ethnocentrism, which is something I'm going to be mentioning a little bit later. Fine. This is a map of which continents and cultures are addressed in which units, and we've made a real effort to keep this as a global course, not a Eurocentric course. Europe does get mentioned in all 3 units, but you see Asia does as well, and Africa gets 2 units, and we were able to weave in South America in unit 3. Historical thinking, of course, it is a social studies class. These are woven in throughout our units as well. We have contextualization. It's a little bit hard to read, but what larger factors influence this event is a key question related to that. We have challenging perspectives. What is the basis of other people's thinking? We can't really know our own perspective unless we understand the where and the logic behind the perspective of others. We compare the different perspectives of historians several times throughout the unit. One book focuses on that Marco Polo didn't reach China, and another book argues that he did reach China, and we have a fun activity where the kids weigh that. It's a little concrete, but it's their first example of that. And then we have a more sophisticated one later in the unit, which asks, did Cortez really conquer the Mayans, or was it a Mayan rebellion? We go to critiquing resources. How is this source useful? And how is this source limited? And finally, we have alternate perspectives up there on the left. Who's not being heard in this conversation? And as I've already mentioned, we're trying to be a more globally focused course. This is a poster that the teachers already have in their classrooms that's been woven into their existing social studies class. I find this really powerful, and the teachers have been integrating it over time. It's not quite phrased in the language of a sixth grader, but we do work with them to understand it, and it reads, the world in which you were born in is just one model of reality. Other cultures are not failed attempts at being you. They are unique manifestations of the human spirit. We're trying to create a course that inspires curiosity about the world, not a fear of the world and not a fear of other cultures. We have people coming to bring high schoolers around the world on a trip, and we want the kids excited to be a part of that. And we want them to be excited to learn about those cultures and not be afraid of it. And in the words of Ted Lasso, be curious and not judgmental. That has to do with the ethnocentrism, which I mentioned earlier with cultural geography. Moving forward, I'd like to thank the grade 6 team for their support and their commitment and their time. And the process isn't done. They were not history majors in college, and there's a lot of history to be learned here. And as I mentioned, they're putting in the nonfiction reading skills, and there's still some pretty heavy lifting to do here, but we definitely have a scope and sequence. And we're going to be unpacking these units quite carefully and really dedicating that time for those teachers. Also, it's very hard for teachers to teach about Africa when most of us have not been there, how to teach about Asia when most of us have not been there. And so that's a continuous learning process for the teachers, but I commend them for their commitment to that important endeavor. So that is where we are headed at this point, and I would welcome any questions if you have them.
What else besides masks did they make?
Oh, I took pictures of all their great, they made candles, and they made like kites, and they made lip balm, with different scents. And then they would design the outside of the lip balm. And so it really sort of blew my mind. And it was really, I hate to use the word cute because it doesn't suggest like high level learning, but it was really amazing. And it was so authentic. It was so authentic, and they really had appreciation. We asked them to think about the materials. Maybe if they have a geometric design such as arabesque, the values of the different cultures. So if there's a value that you appreciate, how can you communicate that through the product? And they go around and their eyes get big and they're like, I want to trade for that. Then they had ideas about, well, if I have 6 on here, everybody values them less. So they start only putting 1 in. That way they get more, right? Supply and demand. And that, I mentioned the previous economics
Yeah.
lesson that had to do with inflation. And so they wise up to it, and it's really amazing. But what they're actually graded on is not the product, but the reflection of the product. So
Great.
it's not like they have to be a sculptor here.
Steve, I appreciate the deep thinking that went into this on the part of the team. You know, the interdisciplinary nature, the alignment, and, you know, the focus on where they've come from and where they're going. Mostly what I appreciate is clearly every aspect of this is about creating a citizen that has a perspective. This isn't about just conveying the content. This is about having a deeper understanding and being able to relate it, you know, to current life, which is certainly what, you know, what we want social studies to do. I mean, that's the essential element of it. I'm just curious, you know, and I'm sure there's a long answer to this question, so it's like, you started out by saying the grade 6 faculty really felt that the curriculum needed to change. What were they looking for in this process that they wanted to see changed, improved generically?
A lot, time and again, in a topic such as food insecurity, which is meritorious and fascinating. But a lot of the ideas of it were so complicated that they ended up being more teacher-centered than student-centered. And we want to put the learning in the hands of the kids, but when you're dealing with a concept like a food desert or budgeting, like how much of the budget is dedicated towards food, I could imagine a high schooler who's starting to work a job and have to pay for McDonald's or Starbucks or something. They might be able to handle that. But so many times the teachers were scratching for resources that were age appropriate. And then when they found those resources, it was a lot of hand holding to unpeel so many layers of these complex topics. So it's not that the kids didn't like it, they did. I mean, we've asked the kids and so forth. Also, sometimes it was like the kids would have be informed about food insecurity, but then when you would ask about the larger world, as I mentioned, it was sometimes disturbing to hear, as I mentioned, about when the pyramids were and when the castles are. And it's not that that's so important in and of itself, but it was as if their conception of the world around them was not grounded. And on maps in and of itself, you know, we might refer to it as the West. Well, what is the West? We need to define that for people and so forth. So we were hoping to sort of keep the thematic themes, keep the modern connections, keep the personal growth, but also provide those underpinnings.
Build the foundation.
Yeah.
I mean, that came through, so. Well, you know, thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad that the care that we put in got through.
Steve, comes through. Sorry, I have to speak up during this session because I was a history major and every time I was a history psych dual major. So tonight I'm like, yes, but every time we do the history curriculum, I just get so excited. And I've seen in the time that my daughters went through our district, a big difference that's emblematic of the transition that the way that social studies and history is taught represents. And when I was in 6th grade, history was a linear study of things that happened. We would draw timelines, and we got a good foundation for the order in which things happen. We got a foundation for understanding East versus West versus Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, right? But that's all we got, right? And the fact that right when they're hitting 6th grade, which is a very vulnerable time when, you know, like parents will tell you, and teachers certainly know, this is where kids start to get funny, right? And they start to get unruly. And a lot of that usually plays out in bullying or, irascible behaviors and me versus you or us versus them. I just find it so awesome that while still capitalizing on the themes that the state wants us to teach. The way we're teaching history and social studies now puts the student in the picture, in a global picture, tries to teach about and dissuade ethnocentrism. Just at a time when these kids' minds are expanding, they're starting to, develop that little independent streak, and they're starting to notice differences among themselves. To kind of park them in a place where differences are celebrated instead of the basis for making fun of another kid. And I just find that awesome, and I wish it was more this way when I was younger. On the other hand, the one thing we do lose is, my youngest daughter versus my oldest daughter. We joke sometimes in our family, like, my youngest daughter doesn't understand maps as well as my older daughter. She doesn't understand geography quite as well because she didn't have to painstakingly color in 226 countries in different colors and memorize their capitals, right? I think there's a gain and a loss, but I like the struggle that this curriculum includes to try and pin some of the conceptual to some of the foundation.
They make these really neat maps with colored pencils, and it's not just like labeling the countries. We have all sorts of things built into the maps, and I find that when you're using colored pencils and you're taking your time, and it calms you down, and we're not drawing, but going through it slowly, and that's sort of our approach to having them promote. Oh, this country's next to that one, and the kids can converse in that way. And then they make this beautiful little piece of geographic art. And it's that steady diet. And then this map inevitably is next to that one. And you start making those connections, and that comes out. And that's actually through the entire course, not just one unit or another.
Thank you.
So we have more to present tonight. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
He is presenting US history as well as civics and American government.
And hopefully I present this in a way that'll stimulate some of your questions also. I know it's always fun having a conversation with you about this, and it's great to be back here. But I want to start with my thank you, because there's 7 people that were involved in writing. There's 7 names on this curricular document, and that doesn't mean there's 11 in our department, but there were a couple more that had their hand in it as we went through this. So I'm going to start with the rationale up front. A lot of the teachers, as they were going through the original version of this, realized that it was very difficult. I guess I'll start 2 slides ahead. We had a thematic approach, and now we're going back to a chronological approach. So that's what we're here to do. We're not changing any of the content or any of the things that were being taught, just the format in which we're doing it. And the reasons for that were twofold. One, one example I put up here is that there was a lot of concurrency that was very challenging when you were talking about a theme and then going through the course in 5 or 6 units and then changing theme and then going through the course again. It felt like we were teaching US history 5 times and the kids were kind of losing some of the connections that were happening simultaneously. The one that I gave here was, if you're talking about liberty and equality and foreign policy, well, during the Cold War, they were using our civil rights battles against us in terms of the world stage. So that's something that by reorganizing this made a little bit more sense to the kids chronologically. So the themes are still there, the content's still there, it's just we're rearranging the way we're presenting it. And the second one up there is anchoring events. That the cause and effect was much easier for the kids to see when we do it in a chronological format. So the big changes weren't so much on the left side. The big changes were in the PBAs, because we were going from essentially 3 different units with 2 bracket units to 6 units that required new PBAs. So I want to share with you some of the PBAs that were written by the team, and Julie had a huge hand in this, and Chris, as far as vertical alignment and where we ended up starting junior year, he had a big hand in that too. So they can feel free to chime in at any point. So the first one is, when we look at imperialism, the wars fought there, in terms of American imperialism and progressive era, it culminates with a monument to progressivism, where they identify the most significant achievements of the movement in American history. As we go through the Roaring Twenties and the Depression, they evaluate the success of one element of the New Deal. And you can see the title is Grading the New Deal. And then they will recommend alternate options that might have been more effective for the New Deal. Going into World War II and the Cold War, they have a perspectivizing PBA on World War II, where they're going to analyze a historical complex situation from various perspectives and create new understandings about that. I know Julie's familiar with that one, so if you have any questions, direct those to her. And it's great to have these two here because they both taught US history at the high school on multiple occasions. Then as you move into civil rights, the social activism of the 50s and 60s, where kids are going to examine and evaluate social change and the abilities of individuals and organizations to accomplish their goals, what works, what doesn't work throughout those movements. The rise of conservatism, which is late 70s into the 80s. The kids are asked to create a political cartoon to show how they were able to regain control and power in the early 1990s and why. And then the last one is modern America, which it always tends to be a struggle to get to, but I think reorganizing this way will allow them to get to a Futures Expo where they're going to use the 150 years of experience from studying history, and then make a reasonable prediction as to where we're going to be in 50 years. So that's kind of the culminating event when all is said and done. On the bottom, I put a research unit, not as a number, but because it's a floating unit that teachers will include as the class goes on, and we can talk more about that. So I put this graphic up just to see how previously we were talking about liberty and equality and going through those 6 units. Now we're going to take that unit, that's one example of civil rights in the Cold War, and then follow the 3 themes within that unit to see the cause and effect, to see how the events run concurrently, how they affected each other within it, and that was the primary rationale for the changes in US history. So again, the topics and the content isn't really changing, it's just the format in which it's being presented. So that's the important takeaway there. Civics. So we also made changes to civics, and it involved a civic investigation from a civic action plan. And so the logistics associated with the civic action plan tended to be a little bit overwhelming, and rather than force kids to go and take action, we wanted to inspire and not force them to have to do this thing. And what it allowed to happen is to open up time to be able to delve into the different perspectives and some of the potential obstacles, rather than actually impacting people in the school, in the district, or in the town, to come up with obstacles or be faced with obstacles. And I felt discouraged and frustrated because in some cases, that was some of the result. Here now, they can leave the class with a little more confidence with how to take action, empowering kids to be civically engaged in how to go through the process. So also the big takeaway for the civics is the reorganization and how we take that civic investigation and run it through all of the different units. So you want to add anything? I feel.
No, I am looking at it. I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
It's something I feel pretty
Yeah,
passionate about. That when we did the civic, the plan that they were doing before, they were pretty much trying to scrounge around. There were some kids that were like, I feel passionate about this, is what I want to do. It's like, what can I do? And then you knew they were, trying to go down to administration to change policy here and there. And one of the things that they discovered is that it takes time to make change. And you're not going to accomplish that in a 60-day course. So what we did by making it an investigation is they were able to pick something they really cared about. And a lot of kids, we do the full spectrum. You'll have some kids that are doing something that is really based in politics. Some people maybe will go more a civic, environmental issue, but something they feel strongly about and connected to everything we talk about. So we are talking about the founding fathers of our country and what happened there and dissent and different topics that come up. And they connect it to what they're doing, but we also kind of push them along to what are the other perspectives, what are the other sides to this, how is change brought about, who are the stakeholders? The end goal is to create productive, effective citizens who are hopefully gonna volunteer so much time on boards and things like that and go out on rainy nights and vote. But they need to be informed and they need to feel that they have a part in this. And when it was pick a topic and come up with this project, and they were always frustrated because they couldn't get a solution that time period, which kind of had the reverse effect, like why bother? So this to us was really important to take one thing that you're really passionate about, and we worked really hard to connect it to each piece as we went along.
Yeah, I mean, we've done some spectacular things with this over the last, I guess it's been 8 years now, or maybe 10 years. But civics runs in the fall, in the winter, and the spring, and the legislative session falls at a certain time, so. That was kind of depending on what the topic was, that was another tricky obstacle, so. All right, when you look at the PPAs on that, yeah, sure.
Before you move on. This change in the civics course, was there any student voice or involvement in this change?
Go ahead, yeah.
Kids were really frustrated, they were really unhappy, they were complaining about civics. They didn't find it to be worthwhile, they're like, why are we doing this? When we made the shift, they take much more ownership of it. I'm not gonna say everybody, but a good percentage of the students just take more ownership of it. It makes sense. By connecting something of interest to them to things that we're talking about are the foundations of our government. And they're like, wait, oh, so that does matter, and it still matters what those enlightenment thinkers were talking about so long ago. That actually can connect it, and I taught it before, and then we kind of tried to, pilot this out a little bit and try it out, and it was. The products the kids were producing were far superior, their investment in it was better, and it didn't seem. Quite so rote that they had to do it. I had a much better response from the kids that I had doing this.
Now, civics is a state required course,
Absolutely.
and there are topics that are required. Is the Constitution covered? I didn't see it in the materials that I have.
So so we start with the foundations of our government, going back to enlightenment thinkers and whatnot. We cover the 3 branches of government, the interaction between them. We cover how a bill becomes a law, all of the concepts that are required by the state, but also they should know as citizens. We cover the Constitution, we cover the civil rights is a huge part of them. What are your rights? What are the difference in your rights as a student and as a citizen? We usually have, we'll have our SRO come in and talk to the kids about what it means, what the 4th Amendment rights really truly mean to you. And all the while, they do for their PDAs connect it to their topic. Voter participation, political parties, there's no content that's been lost in this. There's just less time spent on. The other, to what extent do acts in school really have to do with this? That's a little tougher sell, so getting them with us.
Civics in medicine has always essentially been outlined by the Constitution. When you look at the topics, and the way we do it, and the rights and liberty, those are all written in the Constitution. And previously textbooks that we had, were organized the same way, so.
Yeah, thank you.
I feel like their plan doesn't prevent an inspired student from moving forward with their area of interest. And when it's not pushed upon them and they're not bitter about it, and they might have found a mentor or found inspiration, I think it's more likely that the civic experience is positive.
Absolutely, and in some cases, we started, once we had independent project come as a course that was required also, there started to be a little bit of crossover, because kids started pursuing what they were doing for their civic action plans. So this kind of was a way to balance that out too.
Thank you.
Anything else?
All right, Seth, you're with me, we're going to psych.
Yeah, there you go.
So the textbook is floating over there, you can see it's a very hefty book. I can jump right into the college level course, obviously, so it's college textbook beyond there. I can tell you that the reason we need it is basically our book is outdated. That's what it comes down to. The current book that we're using was published in 2010. The book that Marianne is looking at right now literally came out last month. It was supposed to come out in the fall and it was delayed. And it was worth the wait because we finally have things aligned. Yeah, we have the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, have been updated twice since the textbook that we're currently using. So like right now, we're teaching the clinical psych unit and our textbook is useless because it is so outdated and what it's saying. It's so confusing for the kids to, bounce back and forth, that we have to come up with other resources. So we had the DSM was updated. The American Psychiatric Association in 2022 released their new recommendations for what every introductory psychology course should have in terms of content and skills. And thankfully, AP decided we should be aligned with them because they had actually, AP had updated our curriculum, the framework back in 2019. So here we are, they are updating again for 2024. They don't typically update that often, but I actually welcomed them changing it again because they're aligned with what the APA is saying, they're aligned with the DSM. So you have three main entities that we're working with that are all on the same page. This textbook is the updated version of what we had previously. David Myers, who is kind of the guru when it comes to psych books, actually has a lot of really great new collaborators in it, which I think brings a lot of new voices into it, which is helpful. This is obviously all the rationale. The AP exam starting next May for psychology is only going to be digital. There are 9 exams that rolling out for next year are no longer going to be paper exams. We don't have a digital option with our current program with the Achieve online platform that they offer with this. Kids can be accustomed to taking that. We can do all of our testing online for them, so it's all digital, so they get used to it, so it's not shifting gears when they go to take an AP exam. And also by having that digital, they get an ebook. We've never had an ebook, which is great. It's great for kids who have, varying abilities, who maybe need to hear the audio portion, need to have it read to them. That's a huge part to it. If you need to search information, a lot easier to do the control F kind of a search feature and to find something than trying to go through. So it definitely will hit a lot of different needs there. As I said, this is the 4th edition. That was the first that we started with. The Achieve platform that they have offers a lot for us to really have kind of this shared experience for all the students because there's so much more that it's offering. So much of it is application. This big shift that we're seeing from APA is really getting more to the skills. The other big shift that I'm so grateful to see from AP, and this textbook follows along with it, is that they have kind of come up with a master list. These are the terms you need to know. One of the things that they looked at was all the different textbooks out there were covering different terms. And these poor kids would go to take an AP exam and be like, well, what's the master list? We literally have a list of 750 terms now that this is what they need to know. They held off on this book to make sure that it covered it. So
Has a lot in there.
it has a lot in there, really confident in the content that's in there.
It feels like also that it really sets them up for what they'll see in college, like this is how it is in college, so their study skills will sort of begin to be mainstreamed into that way of thinking,
Yeah.
that way of studying.
And because it's APA's putting out for any introductory, it's for college level courses as
Right.
well, so we're
Yeah.
definitely gonna be along with
Yeah.
that. So, my slide here on the strengths of the text, obviously super current, as you can see. The content, if you look through, you'll see that there's just a great deal of diversity in there in terms of who's represented, in terms of how they are explaining things, where it's not just the side note that they used to be in some cases for some groups. I mentioned alignment quite a bit, I think that's really important. Big, plus from the kids as far as feedback, because we did, have the students look at it. We actually started this process last year, we were trying to replace it and then found out about what was happening and said we should hold off because everything was gonna change again. So I had students last year that looked at several books and then the kids this year as well. And the appearance, the graph, I mean, take a look yourself, just even the kids kept commenting about the font, like it's just so easy to read. Something really simple, if you flip to the glossary in the back, they added simple little, grid lines, just makes it easier. It's very readable.
Yeah, very.
The way that it's written, which is David Meyer's kind of style, is that it's a lot of storytelling, a lot of examples, a lot of application, which is what the kids need to do. It's definitely appropriately challenging for an AP course, but the kids do it. I mentioned the resources already, and review was another thing the kids commented a lot about, is that the questions at the end of each unit
I saw
were great, there were checks along the way, there were little tips like the exam tip here and there, there's a full practice exam in the back of that book, plus everything they have digitally online. So, I mean, we think it's a great book, we have waited a very long time for this book, if you think about it, current kids were toddlers when the last book that they're using now came out, so. And then just that's the process.
Any questions from members of the committee?
Didn't we last year, we had to put off getting a new AP Psych book? And one of the things we thought was that it would be better to wait until that fourth edition came out, right?
They were, I think it was that, and there was another text as well, yeah.
Because it was supposed to, the publication date was supposed to be October. And like I said, they put it off because AP has changed, the new framework from College Board starts in September. We're going from 9 units to 5, they reordered the whole thing and it fully matches what's here.
So we were the way.
Well, I would say that in doing the college searches 3 times, I learned that at all of the liberal arts colleges, psychology and business are like the top 2 majors, right? And we're doing our kids a disservice if we have an older book that is the history equivalent of teaching our kids about the USSR and Yugoslavia, when those don't exist anymore.
No, it really is, and it gets really
Yeah.
confusing for the kids.
And I do like the layout of this and the examples, the AP exam
Yeah.
test samples in every unit. It's phenomenal. It's really
And
good.
it is a heavy book, it's a big book. I will tell you, we cover that entire book, the kids will read that entire book. We tell them to keep it at home, and do their reading at home, they're not lugging, we never use it in class, so. Their only downfall that the students gave in their feedback was, it's big, it's heavy. But we say, okay, you're gonna probably have to cover it and take it home at the beginning of the year, but hopefully we'll have a couple of extras in school, so if they have time on the bridge they wanna read, they come and borrow a book. But we never use the book in class, so it just stays at home, you don't have to worry about that.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you all of you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time tonight as well as all of the reports.
Thank you.
And I'd like to have Ella Sand come. Yes. Welcome back. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
So Ella is in the math department, which we are joking. I've been hanging out so much with the math department this year. It's very funny. It's like every meeting they turn around, they're like, "You're back." I'm like, "You know, you got the bug." I do. So it was really neat to hear that Ella had suggested a STEM trip to London and Paris. So I'll turn it over to Ella to describe her trip.
Yeah, I teach math at Daniel and I teach algebra through calculus. I teach almost all courses and I enjoy them all. And hopefully we're gonna have a good trip and kids can see how it is related, how it's the same in other countries too, because I got my education back in Turkey. And I didn't have to take one math course here when I tried to, become a math teacher. They told me you gotta take US History 101, got some clay lessons, clay courses, but nobody asked me to take another math courses because it's international. So hopefully in this trip, our kids are gonna be able to see that. Whatever they learn in the classroom in the United States, in medicine, this little town, it's same in Paris or in London or any other, places in the world, because it's international. And our plan, we are just hoping that kids see that international language and also are gonna have European math in Europe. It's a big deal too. It's, coming from Europe anyway. So they're gonna see its roots. They're gonna visit some museums. They're gonna experience some. They're gonna see the Da Vinci's, statues over there, how they work math in the art. Or hopefully they're gonna be able to recognize that in the art form and in the pure science form, and hopefully they're gonna enjoy that a little bit more. As you can see here, and the itinerary on the hold on, let me just go slide by slide. That's my rookie mistakes, that's my first time.
Your first time.
So yeah, my first time presenting. So when you're just in that, I just summarize them in a few items. So for example, we're gonna stay in hotels there, and I just picked that hotel. This is the actual hotel last course group and last math group stayed in. I found the picture online. So this is one of the hotel rooms, for example. 3 kids are gonna stay in the room, but if somebody wants to, I want my own room, with additional fee, they can stay in their own room too. But usually kids are gonna stay in 2 to 3 in one room. It's gonna be arranged like that, and those are 3 to 4 star rooms. They're close to city centers, so they're not gonna have to travel a lot. They're not gonna spend some time traveling. So, and they're really, I just read the reviews of those hotels too. They're really well used, and Explorica just gives some kind of insurance on those hotels too. They've been working with those companies for years. And so meal information, the tour, it covers the meal, breakfast and the dinner. Lunch is not gonna be covered in those trips, but they're just offering their local taste. So I don't know how much they're gonna like being on a toast in London, but at least they're gonna experience that there. But still they're gonna have that, our classic bagels and croissants, they can enjoy that one too. But I think they're gonna try and they're gonna enjoy that. But as I say, they're gonna have all the other options. And for France, they're gonna try some crepes maybe, or whatever their local foods, but they always have the other option in every single hotel. And they're gonna do some dinner options, and of course in London, fish and chips is gonna be one of them, and curry dinner, since they're huge Indian cuisine there, they're gonna try all of those too. But in every place we go, they're gonna find another meal, because I have a teenager at home, I know they can be picky, so we're gonna have all those options available for them. Lunch is not covered, but during the day, since we're gonna be traveling a lot and our days is gonna be fully packed, maybe, I don't know, it's optional. They can have a granola bar maybe sometimes, or we can stop by in a place that they would like, but it is not covered in our plan, we didn't think about lunch, we just excluded that from our plan. And we're gonna have chaperones, of course, during that trip, but we're gonna have tour directors as well. They're gonna help us because they are gonna be local. They're gonna help us in emergency situations. Also, they're gonna be traveling with us as well. They're gonna help us with logistics. Even some of us have experience in those countries. We're not the experts at the end, so we're gonna have a tour director, tour guides with us during the days and help us with our needs, our plans. We're gonna be guided during the day. And also communication on the tour. For each trip, tour prepares an online communication site. So we're gonna give a code to the parents. They're gonna be able to see, oh, we are here right now. We're gonna do, they momentarily post to that website. It's gonna be secure, of course, only family accessible. It's not a Facebook post anybody can access. But parents can see where their kids at that moment are. So we're just gonna post some pictures, some posts. We're here, we're telling them here, maybe some nice pictures. So they can just reach out to their kids. We're also gonna have our cell phone. We're gonna have cell phones as well there. It is easier to get one of those pay-as-you-go phones over there as well, they can reach out. We're not gonna bring Daniel hand phones over here because of the cost, of course, but we're gonna have some cell phone. And also, everybody, everywhere, we're gonna go, they're gonna probably have a Wi-Fi service as well, so FaceTime or other, kind of digital services, they can just reach their kid as well. And, for safety and security, they have, those are 24/7 emergency support they're gonna provide for us there, and they have office, Explorica has their offices, 45 offices in the places, especially in Paris, and then London, they have their own offices, but they're also working with other companies too, they're in local companies, so they're gonna provide us some safety, security, whatever we need, they're gonna help us with that. And for safety and security, they provide insurance. But also if some students and parents just need some extra insurance plans, it's provided as well. But are just gonna cover some basic insurance, which gonna be lost luggage, some, health related reasons, if, family members, health issue, maybe they might have to come back. These are gonna be covered under this insurance plan. And for payment options, one option is full payment at the time of the agreement. They say, okay, I'm sending my kids, that's the full payment. And the other can be monthly automated plans, they can just monthly installment plan. Another one is 4-step manual plan, which is they're paying 25%, I think, upfront, then they're paying the 75% later on, 30 days before the travel time. And then for tour specific, it's gonna be an 8-day tour next year, April break time, and 4 days we're gonna spend in London, 4 days in Paris. And for during those trips, I just gave the details over here. We're gonna spend, of course, we're gonna see some landmarks, but in the meantime, we're gonna visit some math and science museums, both in London and Paris. And also during our daily visits, we just have some scavenger hunts. Some of them in every city, we're gonna have a scavenger hunt. They are preparing that, they have their templates, but of course I will oversee them as a math teacher because right now we don't know which students are gonna come with us, so I cannot just prepare a pre-calculus scavenger hunt for our students. After we have the list who is coming with us, then we're gonna oversee those templates, we're gonna maybe change this topics, maybe adjust the questions. So everybody in our tour can understand, participate, and enjoy the activities. So right now I don't have any activity or template to present because I don't know our students, so I cannot just know what we're gonna do.
What grade are you?
It's gonna be open to all high
All
schoolers, so that is the reason I cannot tell. We could just have, calculus students in the group and algebra 1 students. That means we have to have 2-3 different activities maybe, but at the end, we want all of them to enjoy, but of course, their level math knowledge is gonna be different, so we have to give different questions to different groups maybe. But we can just handle the actor when we know the list, our roster, so we can just go over that plan.
So these STEM activities in math and science, that's developed by the tour company, that's part of what they offer, or that came from us?
What they offer, they normally have that built in their, that's a STEM course plans, and they have their, yes, that's what they do. But as I say, after we have the roster, we might have to adjust their questions in those scavenger hunts or topics. We might just play with them a little. Okay. And yes, those are the dates, 4 days in London, and they're gonna enjoy, that's it, we're gonna visit the museums, we're gonna have scavenger hunts, they're gonna see the Buckingham Palace and Big Ben. We're gonna have, last day in London, we're gonna have Jack the Ripper evening walking tour, so they're gonna see the Hyde Park. And then they're gonna go through Channel, we're not gonna have another flight, and even on the flight, actually, I have my plans. Because every single time in math course, especially when it comes to sinusoidal functions unit, I say, when you're just going, the little screen tells you air speed and land speed. Why is the difference? So I can just make a little, oh, that's a good time to talk about that on the plane, maybe. So not just, there's not a math class, of course, but I'm sure I'm gonna find a lot of different chances to have them, because I have that question too, when are we gonna use this? Why do we use this? So I'm sure I'm gonna find a few examples to point out during those, during that period. And also, in Paris, they're gonna see the, of course, Eiffel Tower, Champs-Élysées, they're gonna see all those, and they're gonna see the Pi room. I'm so excited for that one, too, as a math person. And they're gonna visit the mathematical room and mathematical search exploration, whisper rooms. They're gonna see how sound traveled in the room. So it's gonna be very exciting and very fun tour as far as I imagine. Yes. So, and the cost of tour, it's $3,902 right now. And it's not gonna change. It says 27th is the last day, but I talked to the guy, the company Explorica, they're gonna extend our $150 discount. So the till we're good, so it's still gonna have that. So our final number is $3,902 from Daniel Hand to Daniel Hand. We're gonna get on the bus from Daniel Hand, that is right now JFK, we're gonna fly, and then when we come back, buses are gonna bring us to Daniel Hand parking lot again. And it's gonna end there. Thank you. You're welcome. So if you have questions, I'll be happy to.
Board of Ed meetings correspond with that 27 deadline to be able to approve.
I think Ella just said that they'll extend that 27 deadline, so they'll still give us the discount.
Yeah,
You don't have to have a whole enrollment until what date?
I explained them, I'm just gonna present it today, so maybe after the approval, maybe a few weeks, I'm gonna need that to present to parents and have the also, if they say it's okay, they're gonna extend it. But I don't think it's gonna be, should we?
Because usually we vote in 2 weeks for
Okay,
the trip, and then that would leave you to sign up after that.
okay,
Is that enough time?
yes, you know.
Any questions from members of the committee?
I would just say that, like, I think it's awesome to have a STEM themed one, you know, we usually have culturally,
You know you can't go.
yeah. Honestly, like, I'm not a STEM guy, but I would love that trip anyway, it's great.
Thank you very much.
Thank
for your
you.
presentation.
Thank you.
So we have any members of the public online?
Yes. Any member of the public who wishes to speak, please use the raise your hand function.
Barring any comments, further comments from the public or board members. At 6:32, we will adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.